Hey everybody, welcome back to Trial and Error. A little bit of a different project for us today. We're going to be working on a Jeep doing some rust repair, which is not fun. However, I think it's a good opportunity to teach some of what I've learned. I am not a professional by any means, but I have done this a time or 20 before, so I'm going to show you how I approach these types of things, and it does vary. It depends on what you're working on. If you are working on an exterior panel, quarter panel, something like that, that's got some bad rust damage to it, take the panel off, get a reproduction piece, weld it in, you're done. What we're dealing with is a weird section behind the seats. It's basically the very front of the rear wheel wells. And there's a whole lot of different things going on. A bunch of intersecting panels, pinch welds, all kinds of fun stuff. So we need to get in there, cut out all the cancer, take it all the way back till we get nice fresh metal, because I don't want this to be a problem for him, you know, even 5-10 years down the road. This should never be a rust issue again if we do it right. So you're gonna see me using a few different tools. I'm gonna link them all in the description if you wanna check them out. One of the tools that you're gonna see me using is a 4.5-inch angle grinder, which most of you probably already have if you've done anything with metal ever. It's the cheapest way to cut metal, and it's definitely not the safest, but for those of you that use angle grinders and you're still on this type of consumable disc, let me look at the description, I'll link it. Diablo, and there's a few different manufacturers out there now making these metal cutoff wheels. The best part about them is, you know, when you start with this, it's 4.5 inches, and then as you're grinding, it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, your ability to use it in weird tight corners becomes less and less and less. I don't use these anymore. This is probably the last one I ever used, and that was a while back. These metal ones are absolutely phenomenal, and they're much safer. The safety squint doesn't protect you when these things go bang, and they don't just crack, they go bang and they explode and shoot shrapnel everywhere. That's the other nice part about these metal ones is I'm sure technically it could, but the odds of something going wrong with that solid metal blade is so much lower than these things are just suicide. With that, let's go cut some cancer. As you see, it is a pretty religious Jeep. It's quite holy. The most important part of this is we need to get ourselves some nice straight cuts that completely cuts out the cancer. You don't want to leave any of it behind. You're going to cut it back till you get fresh metal, and in some cases that means you gotta make a cut into another panel that you really didn't want to get into. But there's no sense in doing this halfway. You have to cut, it really is cancer. You have to cut it all out. And I like to start with some nice fresh lines that I can work with and build my panels off of those lines. Now, if I owned this Jeep, I would be all over this with the plasma cutter and just cutting that section out. But because it's not mine, I have too much respect for other people's stuff. I'm going to go about this the old-fashioned way with a 4.5-inch angle grinder, and that way I avoid any risk of putting too much heat into a panel. We're going to be working really close to the exterior sheet metal, and I would not want to damage that. It's all original paint on this Jeep, so I'd like to keep it that way. So we're going to go about it a little harder way with the angle grinder, but it's a safer way. Got in here and cut out that cancer. We're going to go up through here. Now this is just very light surface rust, so I'm going to leave that in place until we get down to here, and then we got some problems. So this is worse than the other side, and this is part really of the heavier body structure here in the wheel and the fender well. So I don't want to do this, but I can't leave it in there. I know it may be 5 years down the road, it might be 10, but that's going to cause a problem. So we're going to section that piece out, and I'm going to put in some probably 11 gauge bar stock just to make sure we've got plenty of meat in here, and that it'll be a repair that will not come back to haunt my poor neighbor down the road here. So obviously we've got a couple of gaps there, not a problem at all. We're going to be welding all of this in anyway, so anywhere that there's a small gap like that is not a big deal. And then once we get some heat in the piece, we can hammer down this edge here to get a nice contour to it as well, to flow into the side panel without putting too much heat into this side panel and damaging the paint. Pretty damn good. Wow, right on the money. Like a glove? So what I'm holding here are the remnants of the bolts that used to hold this roll bar in place. All but two of them broke right off as soon as I started to turn them. So needless to say, we don't have a way to mount these again. And what we're going to do is reposition it. We're going to mark the holes because the holes are gone now. Part of where the front bar mounts is all my new metal. So we're going to get this bar back into place, which is a royal pain in the ass. And then we'll mark the holes. For me, that's the way to go. Oh, this thing sucks to move. There we go. What a pain in the ass. Here's a Sharpie. So in order to get the holes in place for the roll bar, with all the broken bolts and crap that's still in that area of the body, this is where I am going to use a plasma torch just because it's just so damn easy. So I can burn right through the new metal that I just put in place, and then what's behind that are the old bolts, and I can just burn through the whole thing and make some nice clean holes to mount our new stainless steel hardware that will hold this roll bar in place. And with stainless steel, I don't ever have to worry about down the road, you know, things rusting up. If you need to take the roll bar out in the future, it'll be super easy. All right, so our panels are fully welded in. We got a nice solid bead around the bottom, up each side. What we're gonna do next here is take some adhesive and we're gonna lay it all in all of these joints, all the way around. Similar to what the factory does, and they do that for the main reason, whatever waterproofing layer we put on this, which will be a textured finish to kind of match the rest of what's under the Jeep. We're gonna be counting on that to be your first layer of protection, but the second one is that sealant. Because where does rust always start? It's always where two panels meet. So we'll do that just like they do in the factory to hopefully give this thing another 40 years of solid body work. So nothing too special here. We're just using some PL375 Loctite. Perfect. So I know this doesn't look real pretty right now, but it's not supposed to. This is functional, sealing those joints up. And once we get it covered in a couple of coats of high build primer and then throw some paint on it, you won't even know. So I was able to get the factory original color, but as you can see, obviously the inside of this thing has been beaten by the sun a bit, so there wasn't much you can do to really blend that and make it look good. The only way to really get that done would be to completely respray the entire floor, but did not feel like getting into that level of detail. So, you know, the seats cover this area up anyway for the most part, so I'm pretty happy with how it came out. We're good and solid there. So now we'll just get this roll bar in place and get some nice stainless steel hardware to bolt this down. That's all new stuff. And we'll get our seats back in and body mounts. So most of them are all loosened up. I basically lifted the back of the body up at an angle here just to be able to get in through those mounts and get them all cleaned up. So we'll get the mounts back in place and get this baby back on the road. So that's going to wrap up this project. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and or criticisms, throw them down in the comment section below me. Otherwise, everybody have a great day.